It says yes, reservations still exist for Native American Indians in the United States, with approximately 326 federal Indian reservations and numerous underland land areas in trust. These reservations are home to many of the 574 federally recognized tribes. That's how divided Gad was. Okay, you had to have that many tribes, though not every tribe has a reservation. The status and conditions of these reservations vary greatly, with some having distinct tribal governments and others facing challenges like poverty and underfunded services. Yeah, because really they don't get, they're struggling, bro. They don't. Nah, bro, don't come to me with that. Oh, but yeah, it is. They got their. That's like that's no different from you saying because they also argue certain black only false Israelites will argue but Mexicans, they have their own land, they have their own territory, but black people do too. Over there in Africa, you have a lot of people that are actually Judites that have their own African continents over there too. Does that mean they're not Israelites, bro? And when they come over here too, they a lot of black women are successfully open their businesses. Their hair, it could be hair salons, or they get their college degrees, bro. Does that mean they're not, or go into higher offices like in the Congress sector of the United States, federal jobs type status stuff, lawyers, stuff like that? So I mean, come on, bro. Like no, it's no. So that's no different from telling God, oh, because they got reservations, they're not cursed, they're not under the curses. Nah, man, that doesn't make sense. Matter of fact, to prove to you the curses, I went into a pop up shop of Jake. Okay, and in the pop up shop that Jake's have, a lot of Jakes open their own businesses. I actually personally believe that a lot of business, self-independent businesses that go out there are Jakes. And then a lot of times when they open their businesses, they ain't as striving as when an Edomite does it, man. And there's many Jakes that are that savvy that they can open their business, and it's not successful, bro. It's not as booming as when a white person might do it, because they're not cursed right now. We're cursed. So,
children in the United States learned that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. But since there were already millions of people living on the American continents when he arrived, what is Columbus's real importance in history? This video will show what really happened during his voyages between two worlds and how they helped shape the world we know today. In 1451, Columbus was born in the Republic of Genoa. There he began his sailing career, but in 1477 he was hired as a merchant mariner for King John II of Portugal. Portugal was gaining power on the seas, colonizing Atlantic islands and establishing trade with African kingdoms. By the 1480s, they found out the Indian Ocean was on the other side of Africa. This discovery gave them a fast and cheap trade route to the rich goods of Asia. During Portugal's rise in power, a group of European scholars thought the Earth was smaller than what was previously believed. This meant one could reach Asia by sailing west. Because of the newly invented printing press, Columbus read about these recent theories and was enthralled with the idea of sailing west for riches. He tried to get funding for an expedition from Portugal, but King John didn't believe in the small Earth theory. He then tried in France, England, and Spain with no luck until 1492 when the Spanish sovereigns, Ferdinand and Isabella, decided to help fund 3 ships for a voyage. They saw Columbus as a means to compete against Portugal's success. The Niña, Pinta, and Santa Maria set sail on August 3, 1492. After a stop on Gran Canaria, the rest of the trip took 5 weeks. On October 12th, land was spotted. It was an island, and at dawn, Columbus went ashore. Because he believed in the small Earth theory, Columbus thought he was near Japan. He called the natives of this island Indians because India was what many Europeans called Asia at the time, but the natives really called it Taino. Trade began between the two parties, but it was clear that the Taino did not possess the fabled riches of East Asia. However, some of them wore gold as jewelry. Columbus was hungry for gold to bring back to Spain. He wandered around searching for a large amount of gold until the Santa Maria crashed into a reef on Hispaniola. Columbus left 39 men at the site to build a colony. He promised he would return for them and sailed back to Spain. When he arrived in Europe, Columbus was famous. He had sailed into the unknown and returned to tell the tale. He brought back many things to show the Spanish king and queen, including Tainos he had kidnapped. But he did not bring enough gold, so Ferdinand and Isabella equipped Columbus with 17 ships for a second voyage, and named him governor of all the lands he discovered. Columbus was an excellent sailor. He found his way back to Hispaniola using his own keen navigation skills, and kept the coordinates of his route a secret. When the fleet arrived at Hispaniola, they found out that the 39 men who were left there to build a colony had been killed by a local chief. They also found out the same chief had lots of gold on his land. Columbus led a crew into his territory and found a gold quarry. The chief was angered by the arrogance of these invaders, and soon fighting broke out. To intimidate the chief, Columbus captured 3 of his captains and beheaded them in public. This enraged the Tainos and disturbed many of the Spanish. To make things worse, there was soon no gold left to mine. Columbus sent letters back to Spain on a ship and exaggerated the amount of gold that was found. To produce more profit for the king and queen, Columbus suggested starting a slave trade. Without waiting for a response, he seized over 500 natives and sent them to Spain. Most of the remaining natives fought against this injustice, so Columbus unleashed terror on them. Once defeated, they were forced to pay tributes of gold to the Spanish. It was worse than slavery. People who didn't find enough were punished brutally. Forced to constantly look for gold, the Taino could not farm their lands anymore. Many escaped into the hills, only to be hunted down. During the first few years of the tribute system, 50,000 natives died. Columbus's brutal command made him enemies in the colony as well as in Europe. In 1496, he sailed for Spain to defend his actions to Ferdinand and Isabella. He left his brother Bartolomeo in charge of the colony until he returned. The king and queen listened to his defense and allowed him to return to Hispaniola in 1498. By now, the colony was a disaster. Bartolomeo was just as bad at governing as his brother was, if not worse. A rebellion had begun among the Spanish, and soon the king and queen sent a royal investigator to assess the situation. He put the Columbus brothers on trial. They were found guilty of numerous crimes against both the Spanish and the natives. The brothers were arrested and sent back to Spain. Christopher Columbus was no longer in charge of the New World. Now old and humble, he was allowed one last voyage across the ocean, but he was not permitted to return to Hispaniola. He explored the Caribbean for 2 years before sailing back to Spain, where he died in 1506. We have learned that Columbus was ambitious, intelligent, and courageous, but he was no hero. His exploits in the colony were He explored the Caribbean for 2 years before sailing back to Spain, where he died in 1506. We have learned that Columbus was ambitious, intelligent, and courageous, but he was no hero. His exploits in the colony were disasters for the native inhabitants, and their way of life was destroyed by his actions as governor. But his efforts led Europe to dominate the world through colonization and the expansion of kingdoms into empires. If Columbus did not succeed, someone else would have. But since
And ultimately, I don't believe Queen Ferdinand and King Ferdinand, not the real Ferdinand, I would say. Or Isabella, she's not the true Isabella, I would say, to say the least on that. They weren't they weren't sincere in their apologies there. They didn't give a shit. Yeah, that's just me. That's just what I believe personally. Because these are the devils we're talking about here. Yeah, but those are some crimes there. That's similar to Gad too. That you should consider there for trying to celebrate Thanksgiving, like, or Thanksgiving as we like to say. And that's why this is Habakkuk. Habakkuk 2 verse 1. I was standing upon my watch and set me upon the tower. And this is the watch right here. We're watching everything. We're watching the past. We're bringing out, because we got to bring out Esau's crimes, and we're going to bring them out. Stubble has to pay for these things, okay? And the Lord ultimately was the one who helped Columbus to get here over here, because this was part of our judgment. These things were destined to happen. They were appointed to happen at that time, still in this time, because we still are in these times. And this is our judgment right now, till this day right now. It's a lighter judgment, but it was torture really at the first. And it still is torture right now. It still can be tortures of the mind, lashings, punishments of the minds, things like that. And we'll watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. I'm going to skip down to 2. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. And what's the vision? That we're ultimately going to be blessed, and the Lord's going to give us the revenge. The day of vengeance is in his heart, and is in his heart, it says the scriptures. 3, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. The vision here that we're writing, making it plain, but basically giving it to y'all on the tables here, clear as day. It's up for an appointed time. The whole clear picture of it all, I would say, is for an appointed time. As far as us being perfect and now in our right minds, and not being subject unto weaker temptations, things of the flesh that can make you fuck up. As far as that goes, that's for an appointed time. Now, some of these visions have already came to pass, or are still currently in the process of being fulfilled and ended. That's why it says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. The end, basically, that vision, the vision of when this comes to an end, when all the answers are given and made clearly to the world and for eternity, to the universe, to us as the Israelites. But at the end it shall speak and not lie. At the end it shall speak and not lie. Basically, Esau being the devil. Okay, 2/3 having to be destroyed for loving this devil, or not wanting to see this devil destroyed. All that being clearly a sin and going off incorrect. That's not going to lie. Looking back and seeing, oh yeah, that was wrong. That's not going to be a lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. And his soul which is lifted up, that's Esau there once again. Yea, also because he transgresses by wine. Wine here is metaphorical here. Wine here can represent wrath, blood, the violence. Esau is a violent man. He is a proud man. He's proud of that violence. You think Columbus really felt sorry for what he did? to the Native American Indians, even though he was in prison for that. No, he did not. Neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire is hell, and is as death and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people, and that's what you have today. Now, at first it started with getting Ephraim and putting Ephraim in those chains and bringing him back and forth on ships. Then it started with Judah, or I would say the first started with Northern Kingdom, Ephraim, and then Issachar as well. Then the Incas are at Naphtali, Zebulon, and then it moved up to I think I would say the Gadites and then the Southern Kingdom got it. Then Southern Kingdom got it the worst though, with the African slave trade, enterprise that was going on in that time. Who enlarges his desire is hell. So Esau didn't get enough. He wanted to get all the tribes. Give me all the tribes. I want to take all their wealth, all their money. I got a point to make on these motherfuckers. Basically, what Esau said in his heart. Who enlarged, right? Going back to Genesis 27. The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. And that's what Esau did and fulfilled. And then you read the saints earlier in that same chapter. He's blessed him. Was get no surprise. Isaac blessed him with the sword. You go into Genesis 25. You read Edom is red. You go into Revelation 6 to prove that this devil is the destroyer today of this earth. The red horse in Revelation 6 is red. He was given a great sword, just like Esau. Edom was given a great sword. You read in Psalm 17, around verse 12, I think, King David mentions the violent man who is the Lord's sword. Left-handed sword. Yeah, because the Lord makes for evil. In Isaiah it says, the Lord has made evil as well as the good. Job mentions in the book of Job, shall we accept good from the Lord and not evil? It says, who enlarges his desire is hell, and is as death and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Because you notice it says there is as death. You think of death. Death takes the animals. Death takes your mama. Death takes your brother. Death will take your son, your children. Everything living, it doesn't matter what it is. That's how Esau is. He wants everything. He wants all your family. He wants their whole family. He wants this other whole nation. He wants this other whole nation. He wants to be everybody. He wants to be accepted by everybody. Because deep down Esau knows he ain't really accepted by God.
1921 in what would become the state of Massachusetts. To the story that many of us were told as kids, it's even older than the country itself. Allegedly, the first Thanksgiving took place in 1621 in what would become the state of Massachusetts, when the Pilgrims invited the Native Americans from the Wampanoag Nation to join them in their first successful autumn harvest celebration. It was a beautiful moment where generosity and goodwill transcended any differences in culture and creed, and it led to a peace treaty where the Pilgrims and natives lived in harmony for years to come. At least, that's what our kindergarten teachers wanted us to believe. But if you've been tuning into our show for a while, you already know where this is headed.
That the first exchanging of food between the Pilgrims and Native Americans may have been visited by aliens.
Okay, maybe you don't know where this is headed. It turns out that the first Thanksgiving wasn't quite as wholesome as we were taught. There was no peace treaty or unification between the Pilgrims and the natives. In fact, the Native Americans may not even have been invited. And to make it even worse, we have written evidence that the Thanksgivings that were celebrated after 1621 took place after major massacres of the Wampanoag peoples. So where did this story about love and newfound friendship that many now consider fact come from? That is what we're talking about today. So sit back, relax, and brace yourself for the messed up origins of Thanksgiving. With how prolific the wholesome narrative of the first Thanksgiving is, you would think that we'd actually know a little something about the event. But it turns out there are very few details to be found in our written records, which may be because no one who attended the event thought it was very important. Let me explain. With crops being harvested every year right before the winter season kicked in,